My wife left me and our child, leaving one note saying she felt trapped in a crying trap. I got married at 19, not because we had to, not because someone pressured us, just because we were young and dumb and thought love was enough, and maybe for a second it was. We were both in college, shared everything from cheap takeout to dreams about what we'd name our first kid. My parents didn't mind, they liked her, said she was kind, ambitious, and smart, but her mother hated me from day one, said I was too serious, too plain, that we were wasting our youth playing house instead of exploring life. She told her straight up, you should be living, not locking yourself down. And when we said we were getting married, she rolled her eyes like she'd seen the ending already. And when my wife got pregnant at 21, we both knew what it meant. No panic, no talk of abortion, just this quiet look between us that said, we're doing this. And we did. I dropped out, got a job in HVAC installs, not glamorous but steady, worked 10-hour days in crawlspaces and rooftops while she finished classes. We barely had money but we figured it out. Hand-me-downs from my cousins, furniture from thrift stores, ramen 5 nights a week, and through it all, I still thought we were good. I thought the hard part would be temporary, something we'd laugh about in 10 years. But then her mom moved in near the 8th month to help, and that's when the cracks started. She'd say shit like, your husband should be doing more, or, a real man wouldn't let you live like this, and my wife just sat there, not defending me, not pushing back, and I started to feel like I was dragging us all alone, like no matter what I did, it was never enough. Then came the birth, long, complicated, scary as hell, but our daughter came out healthy, crying and perfect, and I cried too, held her like my hands were made for it, and thought, okay, this is where we start. But what followed wasn't joy. It was silence, coldness, her slipping into herself, into this hollow space I couldn't reach. Postpartum hit hard and I tried, God I tried, holding the baby at night so she could rest, cleaning bottles, cooking, going to work on 3 hours of sleep, coming home to a quiet room where she barely looked at me. I told myself it would pass, that we'd come through it. But one Saturday morning I woke up to the sound of our daughter crying and realized it had been going on for a while. Too long. And I reached over but the bed was empty. I called her name, nothing, walked through the apartment half awake until I saw the closet half empty, the drawers open, and a piece of paper on the kitchen table, folded like a letter, just one page, no apology, just, this place feels like a cage, I can't breathe here, I can't do this kind of life, don't try to find me. And I stood there reading it over and over, not understanding what I was reading, like it was written in someone else's story. And our daughter was still crying in the background but my hands wouldn't move, my legs wouldn't move. I was 22, holding a 5-month-old baby and a goodbye note, and everything I thought I knew about love, about us, about promises, it just died right there on that table. I don't remember much from the weeks after she left, just static. The kind that fills your head when the world gets too loud to process. Everything was noise, everything was heavy, everything was too much and never enough. I was 22 with a 5-month-old baby, no sleep, no plan, and the only thing keeping me from falling through the floor was the fact that she needed food, warmth, diapers, and someone who wouldn't vanish. My mom came by the second day, didn't even knock, just walked in, took one look at me and the state of the apartment, grabbed the baby and said, go take a shower, I got this. And I think I stood under that hot water for 45 minutes, not moving, just breathing again. My little sister came after class, held the baby like it was the most natural thing in the world, sat on the couch doing homework with one hand and bouncing her with the other. We rotated like that for weeks, like some kind of low-budget survival unit, and I kept moving, not because I was okay, but because there was no one else. And still, even with all that, I kept trying to reach her. I called every number she had, messaged mutual friends, sent emails, went through every social I could think of, and nothing, like she was a ghost, like she never existed. So I took a long shot and drove out to her mom's place, baby seat in the back, flowers in my hand like an idiot. And the second she opened the door she looked at me like I was a roach in her hallway. No hello, no, how's the baby, just crossed her arms and said, you shouldn't be here. And I told her I wasn't looking for a fight, I just needed to know if she was safe, where she went, something, anything. And she said, you ruined her life. Just like that, flat, like it was fact, like I had trapped her brilliant daughter in a prison of diapers and casseroles, said I'd dragged her down, wasted her youth, and now I needed to let her go. And when I asked if she'd at least want to see her granddaughter, she looked past me like she didn't hear it, and said, don't come here again, we won't be handing out charity, and slammed the door in my face. And I stood there on that step, holding my baby, holding those grocery store flowers, realizing for the first time that she wasn't lost. She was gone, and her family wanted her to be. They supported it, defended it, built a wall around her and painted me as the poison. And I carried that truth back to the car like another piece of weight I didn't ask for, and from that day on I stopped looking for her, stopped hoping, because what the hell was I hoping for? That she'd change, come home, be a mother again? No, that ship sank with her note, and now it was just me, and my daughter, and the job, and the grind, every day the same. Wake up, feed her, drop her to mom or my sister, put in 10 to 12 hours on vents and ducts and roof units, crawl under buildings full of mold and sweat, come home to a picture on my phone of something I missed, her first time rolling over, her first real giggle, her first tooth, and I smiled, sure, I always smiled, but it cut deep every time, like holding up your pride, to block your grief, and I told myself it was worth it, that I was doing the right thing. And maybe I was, but that didn't mean it didn't fucking hurt. Because no one talks about how much it hurts to survive something while losing pieces of life you can never get back. And those first 6 months were exactly that. Me learning how to be a father alone, while quietly mourning all the moments I never got to see with my own eyes. By the time she was a year and a half, I hired a nanny, part-time at first, just a few hours a day so my mom and sister could take a breath, and I could pick up more shifts, more clients, more work. Because there was always more work if you didn't say no. I was installing vent hoods and duct runs and crawling through basements that smelled like dead animals, sweating through my clothes and freezing in the same hour, and I didn't care. I had one job. Don't sink, and I didn't. When she turned 3, I got her into a good daycare with extended hours, cost more than I wanted but I paid it, because she deserved structure, other kids, nap time that didn't happen on grandma's couch, and around then I started getting noticed. The boss saw I never called in, never dragged ass, always got jobs done right, no corners cut, and one day he told me to build a small team and lead it, just like that. You run the crew. I'll give you better clients, and I did. We were good, fast, reliable. I kept my guys in line, taught the new ones, handled problems before they reached the office, and 2 years later I opened a branch for the company in a different part of the county, and it wasn't mine on paper but I ran it like it was, full control, full responsibility. The kind of thing most people wouldn't expect from some dropout dad at 26. But I earned it, and my daughter, she was growing like a weed, curious, kind, loved puzzles and anything with wheels, and every night when I came home, she'd be waiting with a toy or a drawing or just a story to tell me in that excited little voice. And I didn't care how tired I was, I sat and listened, every word, because I'd already missed enough, and I wasn't missing anything else, and we were good, really good. We had routines. Weekend pancakes, movie nights on Fridays, trips to the park, dumb games that made her laugh until she hiccuped. And the only thing I couldn't do was answer the one question that showed up out of nowhere around age 4. Where's mommy? And I'd freeze every time, not because I didn't have an answer, but because no answer felt fair, not to her, and not to me. I never lied. I just said, she had to go, or, she couldn't be here, and I watched her try to process that, try to turn it into something her brain could hold. And over time she stopped asking, not because she didn't care, but because she saw it made me sad. And maybe that's the part that hurt the most, that a 4-year-old already knew how to protect other people's feelings, and I told myself I'd make it up to her by never letting her feel abandoned again. And I didn't. I showed up to every recital, every birthday, every scraped knee and bedtime fear. I was there, not perfect, not always patient, but present, and I built a house around her, not walls and floors, but a life, stable, real, one she could rely on. And if you'd seen me back then, you'd think I had it all together, the steady job, the clean car, the polite kid, but the truth is, I still carried the silence she left behind, still locked the door twice at night, still checked my phone on her birthday out of habit even though I knew there'd be nothing from the woman who vanished. And no matter how well things looked from the outside, a part of me never really unclenched. She finished high school with honors, got into the college she wanted, didn't even need my help on the essays, just asked me to proofread once or twice. And when we loaded her stuff into the car that day, I held it together until I drove off, and then I had to pull over because the house suddenly felt too quiet without her music, without her laughter echoing through the hallway. But I was proud, damn proud. She turned out better than I ever imagined, and yeah, I was seeing someone by then, not rushed, not forced, just real. A woman who knew I had a past, who never tried to replace anything, just added peace. And the two of them clicked slowly, but solid. My daughter liked her, saw that I smiled more, breathed easier, and most weekends she came home from campus to visit, sleep in her old room, cook something stupid with me in the kitchen, and it felt like finally, maybe. We were just normal, not broken, not surviving, just living. And then one Saturday afternoon someone knocked on the door, not loud, not frantic, just soft, like they had all the time in the world. And my daughter opened it before I could even get up from the couch, and I heard her say, "Can I help you?" And then this voice, way too familiar, way too sweet for the weight it carried, said, "Look at you, all grown up." And I was already moving. I knew, even before I saw her face, the grandmother, her mother's mother, the one who spit on me when I came to her house with a baby and begged for help, the one who told me I ruined her daughter's life and slammed the door in my face like I was nothing. And now she stood on my porch like she had a right to be here, talking to my daughter like she'd known her all along, like 20 years hadn't passed in silence. And my girl just stood there, confused, guarded, like someone who's sure they should recognize a face but can't place it. And when the old woman tried to step inside, she instinctively blocked the doorway. "And that's when I got there," said her name once, sharp, and she flinched, and I asked, calmly but cold, "What do you want?" And she smiled like we were catching up over coffee, started going on about how she missed her granddaughter, how she'd always thought about her, how beautiful she'd become. And I said, "You're not answering my question." And her face cracked for a second, but then she regrouped, said something about how time heals all wounds, and I stopped her, told her flat out, "If you're not here with the truth, get off my property." And she paused, hesitated, then said she came because your daughter might be the only one who can help her mother. And that's when I knew it wasn't about reunion, it was about burden. They lost control of her, and now they wanted us to clean it up. And I felt my hands clench without meaning to, because she thought she could just show up and flip the script, like the years didn't happen, like we'd been waiting. And I looked at my daughter and saw it in her eyes. She didn't recognize this woman, not really, and now she didn't want to. I stepped outside, didn't raise my voice, didn't posture, just stood between her and the doorway like a wall. And for a second, neither of us said anything. The wind moved around us but we didn't. And then she spoke first, like she'd been waiting for me to set the tone. Said she wasn't here to cause trouble, just thought it was time, that maybe my daughter should know her mother's side. And I just stared at her and said, "Why now?" And she looked down like the answer was stuck to her shoes, mumbled something about, "She's back, but she's not well." And I said, "What does that mean?" And she finally looked up and said it, that her daughter had been drifting for years, hopping towns, doing odd things for money, then disappearing again, that she got caught up in people she shouldn't have, and now she was back in the city, living in her place, barely eating, barely talking, and she thought maybe, just maybe, seeing her daughter, our daughter, might bring her back, might ground her. And I laughed, not loud, not cruel, just that kind of dry sound you make when the insult's too deep to even bother getting mad. And I asked her straight up, "So you want my kid to be a rehab plan for the woman who walked out on her as a baby?" And she flinched but didn't answer. So I kept going. "You think she owes something to the ghost that never showed up to birthdays, never called, never once asked if she was okay?" And the woman had the nerve to say, "But she's her mother." And I nodded, just once, and said, "You're right. She is her mother, and she's the same mother who left her crying in a crib with a note on the table." And then I looked her dead in the eye and said, "You want to talk about what people owe each other? I'll remind you of what you said to me 20 years ago. Don't you dare show up on this porch asking for handouts. You won't get any here, remember that? Well, now I'm saying it back to you. Get off my porch." And I turned and walked back inside, closed the door in her face, didn't slam it, just shut it like ending a chapter. And when I turned around my daughter was standing in the hallway, eyes full, face flushed, and she whispered, "Is it true? She said that to you?" And I said, "Yeah, and worse, but it doesn't matter now." And she asked, "So what do I do?" And I looked at her, this woman I'd raised from a screaming infant to someone with her own voice, and said, "You're an adult. It's your choice, but don't let guilt dress up like love, and don't carry a broken woman on your back just because she shares your blood." And she wiped her face and nodded, and I could tell something in her cracked that night, but it didn't break. The next morning she came into the kitchen early, before coffee, before the world felt real, and said she wanted to talk, and I could tell by the way she stood there, arms crossed, not defensive, just holding herself, that it wasn't going to be small. And she said, "I want to see her." And I didn't ask who, I already knew. And before I could say anything, she added, "Not to save her, not to fix anything. I've had questions stuck in my head since I was a kid, and I think I need to ask them out loud now." And I nodded, because I knew that feeling, the one where silence starts to feel like a lie. And I said, "Okay, just that, nothing more," and told her she didn't owe anyone anything, not closure, not forgiveness, not time. And she said she understood, but still needed to go. so I gave her the address. The one her grandmother had on the form she left when she showed up, told her exactly where it was, what to expect from the neighborhood, gave her a backup plan if anything felt off, handed her my phone number again even though she had it saved, and said, if anything feels wrong, even for a second, call me, and she said she would, and then she left, and I stood there in the kitchen with my coffee going cold and every part of me wanting to chase after her. But I didn't. I let her go, because she wasn't a little girl anymore. And this time, she was the one choosing to face the past. I spent the whole day pretending not to watch the clock, kept myself busy, cleaned the garage, did laundry I didn't need to do, walked around the block twice, but nothing stuck. Everything felt stretched and sharp, and I didn't hear from her for hours, not even a check-in, and I told myself to stay calm, that she was old enough to handle a conversation, but I also knew who she was walking into, and I hated it. Hated that this was her burden to carry, even for one afternoon. And when the door finally opened around 6, she didn't say anything, just walked in slow, closed it gently behind her like she was trying not to wake something up, and I looked at her and my stomach dropped. Her face was still, too still, not shock, not anger, just blank, like she'd used up everything she had on the way home. I didn't speak, just waited, and she finally said. She let me in like she knew I'd come, and sat down at the table, rubbing her fingers together like there was something stuck she couldn't shake. I waited, didn't push, and she went on, voice low and steady. She looks normal, not great, but not falling apart either, not like Grandma made it sound, just tired, like she hadn't slept well in a while. And I nodded, listening, and she said, I asked her why, just that, why she left, and she didn't flinch, didn't cry, didn't say sorry. She just said, you cried all the time, you wouldn't stop. I couldn't breathe in that house. I felt like I was trapped in something I didn't choose, and I felt something twist in my chest, but I stayed quiet, and she kept talking. She said it made her sick, the crying, the routine, the walls, the smell of formula and soap and laundry, like she was rotting inside. And when I asked her again, are you saying that was because of me? She looked at me, dead in the eye, and said, yeah, I know it sounds bad, but I needed to leave or I was gonna lose it completely. And that's when her voice cracked, just once, and she covered her face with her hands like she was ashamed of even repeating it out loud. And I got up, walked over slow, sat next to her and didn't say a word, just wrapped my arms around her shoulders and held her like I did when she was 5 and had a fever and cried because the world felt wrong. And she leaned into me, finally let out a breath she'd been holding all day, and after a long pause she said, I thought maybe she was sick, or struggling, or stuck in something she couldn't fix, but she's not, Dad, she's just empty, like she felt nothing, like I was nothing. And I said, I know, and meant it, because I did, because I remembered that look, that same flat tone when she left, that same void behind her eyes. And my daughter whispered, I needed her to at least lie to me, you know? To pretend she regretted it, to say she missed something, anything. But she didn't, not even a flicker, and I just held her tighter and said, then that's not on you, that's not your wound to carry. And we sat there a long time after that, not talking, not moving, just breathing, and I thought about how far we'd come, how much of our life she missed, and how in the end, she didn't even ask about it, because people like her don't look back, they only show up when they want to be seen. We sat on the back porch the next morning, 2 mugs of coffee going cold in our hands, her hair still messy from sleep, and the silence wasn't heavy, just real, the kind that fills the space between people who've been through something they don't want to pick it yet. And after a while I said, you don't have to talk if you're not ready, and she nodded, but after another few seconds she said, I'm ready, and I waited, didn't interrupt. And she took a breath and said, I don't want to be angry, forever. I don't want to drag her with me, her choices, her coldness. I don't want that in my backpack for the rest of my life. And I nodded again, and said, good, because you don't have to. You're grown now. You get to decide what you carry and what you leave behind. And she asked me, what did you do, back then, when she left? And I said, I worked. I held you. I cried in the shower where no one could see. I buried it so you didn't grow up shaped like pain. And she wiped under her eyes and whispered, thank you for that. Thank you for never walking away. And I looked at her, really looked at her. This woman I had raised from a screaming red bundle to a sharp, kind, strong adult. And I said, thank you for being mine. And we just sat there for a long time, not talking, just letting the air settle. And when she got up to pack and head back to school, I walked her to the car, helped her load up, hugged her longer than usual, and said, if she ever tries to come back again, and you want to talk, or scream, or do nothing at all, I'm here. Always. And she nodded, kissed me on the cheek, and drove off with her music too loud like she always did. and I stood in the driveway for a bit, watching her taillights disappear, not sad, just still, like the kind of quiet that follows a hard-earned truth. And later that night I told everything to my girlfriend, the whole thing, from the note on the table to the woman at my door, to the way our daughter faced it head-on and walked away without flinching, and we talked until past midnight. Not in circles, just through it, like you do when you're not trying to fix anything, just understand it. And she didn't try to make it better, she just listened, and that mattered more than any advice ever could. And 2 days later I opened the mailbox and found a letter, no return address, but I recognized the handwriting before I even unfolded the paper, and I read it once. One short page of guilt-drenched poison, lines like, "Hope you're proud of yourself," and "You've turned my granddaughter against her own mother," and "This is what you wanted, isn't it?" And I didn't laugh, didn't rage. I just folded it neatly and dropped it in the trash, like swatting a fly that buzzed one time too many, and stood there thinking how strange it is that some people rot in their own lies for decades and still think they're clean. And I muttered under my breath, "Same old snake pit," and walked away. And that evening I picked up my phone and texted my daughter, "Doing barbecue this Saturday. Bring whoever you want. I'll get the good ribs." And maybe that seems small, maybe it is, but that's how peace works, not in grand speeches or perfect endings, but in ribs on a weekend, in people who show up, in the ones who stay. And 5 minutes later she replied, "Hell yes. Can I bring 2 friends and a giant appetite?" And I smiled, threw my phone on the counter, and started making the shopping list, because this, finally, felt like the kind of life I fought to build. Later that night, when the grill was off and the last plates were scraped clean and the music inside was low and dumb and exactly right, I stepped out the back door with a half-drunk bottle of Coke and no plan except a little air. The sky was dark but soft, the kind that doesn't press down on you, just sits there, quiet. I sat in one of those cheap plastic chairs that always feel colder than they look, and let myself just be still for a minute. No thinking, no scrolling, no fixing, just still. The yard was half shadow, half orange from the kitchen lights bleeding through the curtains. I looked at the house, not the walls, not the roof, but the life inside it. Laughter, clinks of glasses, low voices mixing together. Through the window I saw my daughter at the table, talking fast, animated, eyes bright, the kind of bright you can't fake. 2 of her friends next to her, nodding, laughing. My girlfriend sitting a few feet away, her hand draped casually over the back of the chair, looking relaxed, like she belonged here, like she'd always belonged. And maybe now, she did. I didn't go back in right away. I just sat there, let the night hold me. It felt earned. I thought, I made it. Not rich, not famous, not loud, but I made it. I didn't just survive all of it. I lived through it without becoming something ugly. And that matters more than anyone knows. I stayed soft where it counted. I stayed steady when everything shook. I raised a child into a woman who looks people in the eye and speaks with her chest. And I did it without shortcuts, without applause, without ever getting to fall apart. I thought about all the nights I came home sore, the mornings I left before the sun, the first day of preschool I missed because of a busted job site compressor. I thought about carrying her out of bed during a thunderstorm when she was 7 because she was shaking so bad she couldn't speak. I thought about the fights I didn't start, the things I didn't say, the help I never asked for. And still, I'm here. We're here. I don't owe her mother anything. I don't owe her mother's mother anything. Not my energy, not my regret, not even my anger. They chose absence. They bet against me. They turned their backs and convinced themselves the story was over. It wasn't. I just kept going. I built something worth staying in. And if anyone ever asks me what the hardest part was, I won't say the empty bed or the silence or the years I had no one to talk to after 9 p.m. I'll say it was this, not letting it shape me, not letting the hurt rewrite who I was, not letting bitterness grow where love was supposed to live. And right then, I felt it. Something loosened in my chest. That weight I used to wake up with every morning, like a hand pressing down on my sternum. It wasn't there. It was just gone. Like it had finally decided I didn't need reminding anymore. I looked back through the window and caught my daughter's eye. She smiled, raised her glass, a little mock toast, nothing grand. I raised my bottle back at her. Didn't say anything, didn't need to. That moment, her eyes, the lights, the sound of a home being lived in, that was everything. Just real. That's it. That's the win. I'm not broken. I'm not bitter. I'm here. Subscribe, hit the like button, and explore more fascinating stories.